Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by Erica Kirk.
Thank you very much, everybody. Please, this is such an honor. This is please be seated. This is the first time we've been at the new and improved Rose Garden, and people are loving it. They're loving it like they've not loved a lot of things. We have the Presidential Walk of Fame, which you just saw, and it just opened. We wanted to get it open for this occasion. We were hoping we were able to get outside, and the weather allowed us to. It was supposed to be a terrible rainy day. I was telling Eric, and God was watching, and He didn't want that for Charlie. He just didn't want that. So it's really beautiful. It couldn't be more beautiful. Today we're here to honor and remember a fearless warrior for liberty, beloved leader who galvanized the next generation like nobody I've ever seen before, and an American patriot of the deepest conviction, the finest quality and the highest caliber, the late, great Charlie Kirk. Five weeks ago, our nation was robbed of this extraordinary champion. He was a champion in every way. I got to know him so well. He didn't like losing, and he was able to fight people that were enemies, and he didn't necessarily love those enemies so much. You know, I heard he loved his enemies, and I said, wait a minute, is that the same Charlie that I know? I'm not sure, but I didn't want to get into it. But it was a horrible, heinous, demonic act of murder. He was assassinated in the prime of his life for boldly speaking the truth, for living his faith and relentlessly fighting for a better and stronger America. He loved this country. And that's why this afternoon it's my privilege to posthumously award Charles James Kirk our nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Thank you. As you know, only hours ago, I returned from a very historic trip to secure peace in the Middle East. People said that couldn't be done. Charlie felt it could be done. Charlie felt it could be done. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. But I raced back halfway around the globe. I was going to call Erica and say, Erica, could you maybe move it to Friday? And I didn't have the courage to call. But you know why I didn't call? Because I heard today was Charlie's birthday. And I said, you know, that was a definite. And I said, we're going to have to forget about some of those very big, very rich countries that expected me to be there. And I can tell you, based on the length of that flight, I wouldn't want to go back tomorrow. But I would not have missed this moment for anything in the world. Nothing. And it's a very important time for our country. And our country is doing so well. It's never done better. We are a country with almost now $18 trillion of investment coming in. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. Previous administration had less than $1 trillion for 4 years. We have more than 18, it'll be much more than 20 by the time the year, more than $20 trillion. There's never been a country in the world that had anything like that. What's happened to our country is incredible in a short period of time. Charlie was a big person for, sir, can we close up those borders, please, a little bit? You know, they're really leaking badly. I said, Charlie, I haven't gotten there yet. But, you know, it came out last 4 months. Literally nobody was allowed into our country. And the only people that were allowed in were people that came in legally. The borders are absolutely stone cold closed, and they reported 0, 0, 0, and 0. So that's pretty good. But he was a big believer. He wanted people in the country more than I did, frankly. He wanted them to come in legally, and he got his wish. October 14th is Charlie's birthday, and he should have been turning 32 years old. I tell you, when I first met him, he was like 22. And I said, boy, he's awfully young, but I thought he was older than that. He looked a little bit older than his age. That's okay. That's not good when you're old, but when you're young, it's great. He had the best of all things, but he was special. But instead, Charlie is attaining a far more important milestone. We're entering his name forever into the eternal roster of true American heroes. He's a true American hero, an amazing person, way, way beyond his years. And I'm honored to be joined by a woman who has endured unspeakable hardship with unbelievable strength, and that's Charlie's widow, Erica. And I just want to thank you, Erica. He loved you so much. I was with him. Oh, please. Thank you, darling. Thank you. I was with him before I met Erica, and he told me he was going to get married. He said, "You won't believe how beautiful she is." I said, "Well, then now that I meet her, he's right." But then he also said, "And you know what? She's like the smartest person I know." See, they do go together on occasion. Not often. Not often. But on occasion they go together. But he was in love with you. He was deeply in love with you. It's great. Erica, your love and courage have been an inspiration to all of us, and we will always be here for you, and we're always going to be here for your gorgeous, beautiful children. And we'll never forget what your family has sacrificed for our country. Man loved our country. When things were going badly for our country, he was so, as you know, angry. He would get angry because he said it doesn't have to be that way. We're also pleased to be joined by an incredible group of Charlie's friends, very powerful friends, actually, and some not so powerful, and they're actually better people. Okay, I know them all. They're the less powerful ones. I have to tell you that, all of you power guys down here. The best ones in the group are the ones that are less successful, but that happens too. No, they're all great, and they're here. And let's start with Erica's father. Where is Erica's father? Where are you? Where are you, Dad? Oh, look at him. Wow. I want to get a hat like that, too. I like that. How are you? Nice to see you again. Thanks as well to Vice President J.D. Vance, who's been fantastic. J.D., thank you very much. Great. Doing a great job. Did a great job on Sunday with George Slopadopoulos. I thought put him away pretty good. Second lady, who's a phenomenal woman, Usha Vance. Thank you very much, Usha. Thank you very much. Great woman. President of Argentina. He wanted to be here. That's Argentina's a serious flight, right? And he's become a superstar, and he's doing amazing things. He's a MAGA person, but it's make Argentina great again. That's what he does, right? And I want you to stand, please, Javier Milei. Doing a great job. Thank you very much. Many members of my cabinet are here. Just about all of them are here. I won't go into every single one of them, but I'll announce a few of the people that have really turned this country around and helped me. Incredible people. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Where is Mike? Mike, what a job you're doing, Mike. What a job you're doing. And I watched you this morning, and you're in there trying to say, look, just let the country open. Everything will be fine. We're dealing with some radical left lunatics. And I would just wish Charlie was here to fight us. I think the fight would have been over already. He would have had a march on the Capitol by people whose average age is about 21, because there's nobody that had that relationship with young people, right, Mike? So thank you, Mike, for being here. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise. Steve, thank you very much. A brave guy and a friend. House Majority Whip, another terrific man, Tom Emmer. Thank you, Tom. Senate Majority Whip, John Barrasso. John, thank you very much. You have all these senators. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm not going to read all their names. I'll be reading all day. We'll be talking about Charlie in about 45 minutes from now. We can't do that. So all of the senators, there's so many of you. Thank you very much. I do want to thank Senator Thune for doing a terrific job. He's really been leading properly. Do you agree, Mike? The team, the two of these guys have been fantastic. So to Senator Thune, I want to thank you very much. Incredible job. I watched him this morning, and he was out there pounding them this morning on television, too. And John Barrasso, thank you for the work you've done, and congratulations on your success. But I want to thank you all and all of the Congress people that are here. I see we have our Attorney General here, and you are doing a fantastic job. Thank you very much, Pam. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have everybody. Wow, that's incredible. Okay, I'm not going to do any more. I'm going to be here too long, but I just want to thank you. Have given him such support, but he always gave you such support. That's why you're here. And very unusual. Charles James Kirk was a visionary and one of the greatest figures of his generation. He was truly an amazing figure and growing leaps and bounds. He knew that the fight to preserve our heritage is waged not only on the battlefield and in the halls of power, of which we have tremendous power here, including the head of a place called war. We call it now war. We had defense. We had our Secretary of Defense. Now we have a Secretary of War. And somehow I think it's more emblematic, and hopefully we'll never have to use war. But the fact that we're ready is very good. Peace through strength is very important. But also in the hearts of our nation's youth, that's where Charlie rode strongest. At age 18, that insight inspired Charlie to found the organization that ultimately touched the lives of millions and millions of people, and so many young people that nobody's ever seen anything like it, frankly. Turning Point USA. It's amazing. And it's actually bigger now. It's become bigger in the last few weeks than Charlie ever thought. I think his end vision in many years from now would have been just a fraction of what it turned out to be in a couple of weeks, right? It's amazing. With hard work and joyful spirit and endless enthusiasm and determination. And he did have great enthusiasm. You know, I always say you need enthusiasm to be successful. He had great enthusiasm. Charlie grew Turning Point into the largest conservative youth organization in the entire country. He forged a personal bond with countless young conservatives. He fought for free speech, religious liberty, strong borders, and a very strong and proud America. In everything he did, he put America first. He really put America first. And ultimately, Charlie became more than a leader of an important organization. He became the leader of historic movements all over the country. There were movements, individual movements, one movement, but it was historic. Everything he did was historic, and a true evangelist for the cause of freedom and the word of Almighty God. God was very important to Charlie. He would say, you know, if you don't have religion, you're not going to have a strong country. It's true. He was so wise beyond his years. You know, I talk to him sometimes and say, this guy is like a young guy. He was really a wise man. From the time Charlie worked on my presidential campaign in 2016, and he was there right from the beginning. He liked me. I don't know. I have no idea why. What the hell was he thinking? He said, you're going to win, sir. I said, you know, I'm running against 17 senators and a lot of tough people and governors. We have all these people. And he said, no, you're going to win, sir. He said, not going to be close. And he made it happen. He helped make it happen. I'll tell you that. Without him, who knows what would be. Maybe you'd have Kamala standing here today. That would not be good. I will tell you, Javier, you don't know who Kamala is. Promise. It would not be good. You agree with that, Howard? He also mobilized countless citizens to go vote. It's called Go Vote. Very simple. And with his help in 2024, we won more young people than any Republican by far in the history of our country. And we won the popular vote. We won the swing states, all 7 of them. Remember, they said, oh, well, if Trump could win 4, that would be nice. I win 7 by a lot, by a landslide. But the popular vote was massive. And we won the Electoral College. Remember, they said, well, it's going to be very hard. I'd say 270. Well, we got 312 to 226. And then we won something called districts and councils and different things. But in one case, we won 2,750 to 525. That's the one where you see the map is almost entirely red, except they have a little blue line on one side and a little blue line, meaning New York, and a little bit Los Angeles. I have a feeling that if the vote were 100%, we would have won that too. You want to know the truth. But he knew, and he knew very well, and he also understood honesty, and he was always concerned with honesty. He said the only way we can lose is if the cheating gets so bad, and that's where we came up with a little phrase, too big to rig. We said, go out and vote. Just go out and vote. And we had that. Remember, we used to say that all the time because people would say, oh, they're going to win. We don't have to vote. Let's go to a movie. We'll come home and watch later. And he wasn't about that. So we come up with really together, we came up with that phrase, we got to make it too big. I never made a speech where I didn't say at the end, now look, the polls are showing good. Don't believe the polls. He said, we're going to make it, Susie, right? Too big to rig. So if you think we're going to win by a lot, doesn't matter. Pretend we're losing. You got to go out and vote. They voted. And at 9:02, the whole thing was over, right? 9:02. Remember, they said, oh, this could go a few days. Well, it went a few minutes. 9:02. And he knew that. And I felt it, but he knew it. He knew it. I think he knew it more than anybody. But Charlie never missed an opportunity to remind us of the Judeo-Christian principles of our nation's founding or to share his deep Christian faith. In his final moments, Charlie testified to the greatness of America and to the glory of our Savior, with whom he now rests in heaven. And he is going to make heaven. I said, I'm not sure I can make it, but he's going to make it. He's there. He's looking down on us right now. It's so incredible. Look at this, how this turned out. This was supposed to be so dark and cloudy. Not dark and cloudy, is it? Look at that, how beautiful that is. There's no artist that can capture it as beautiful as it is today. Wow. It's amazing. As I said, on the day that he was assassinated, Charlie Kirk was a martyr for truth and for freedom. And from Socrates to think, and to St. Peter, from Abraham Lincoln to Martin Luther King, those who change history the most, and he really did, have always risked their lives for causes they were put on earth to defend. He was put on earth to do exactly what he was doing. He didn't want to waste time. He would have been a top student at any college in the country. I know the college as well. He's smarter than the guys there. He was so smart. But he almost, I guess, didn't have the time. He knew what he wanted to do. It wasn't like, gee, I want to sit in the classroom for 4 years listening to people teach me liberal principles, because they were never going to teach him that anyway. But he didn't have the time. He really didn't have the time. But every time the enemies of goodness and virtue tried to silence the voice of righteous and noble leaders like Charlie, they failed. They seem to fail. Ultimately, they look like they're doing well, and then they end up failing, because the truth has been unrelenting over the years, over history. And people like Charlie, it's just they've got a power that others don't have, and very few people will ever have. So today, like those martyrs before him, Charlie's voice, his message, and his legacy are stronger and greater than ever before. They are greater than ever before. Look, this is a horrible event, but it brought out the greatness of Charlie. Nothing could have ever supplanted this. It's incredible the way people are talking about him. And with great love. I mean, I read so many stories about some of the enemies, but I watch the enemies, and it's hard for them to speak badly about him because they just don't. And then you do have people in the days since Charlie's killing, we've seen exactly why our country so dearly needed his example. We've watched legions of far left radicals resort to desperate acts of violence and terror because they know that their ideas and arguments are persuading no one. They know that they're failing. They have the devil's ideology, and they're failing, and they know it. They feel it, and they become violent. They seem to become very violent on the left. They've rammed vehicles into federal law enforcement, fired sniper rifles at ICE agents, and me, you know. But I made a turn at a good time. I made a turn at a good time. I turned to the right. Charlie couldn't believe it, actually. He said, "How the hell did you make that turn?" I said, "I don't know." But fired rifles and threatened the lives of our Supreme Court justices, our great justices. They have to be protected. We just issued a lot of money, $60 million, to protect the Supreme Court justices. Very important. We can't let anything happen. In places of worship, we're protecting our people. We've seen that a candidate for Attorney General in Virginia boasted that he would want to see the Republican legislature, a legislator in Virginia, shot in the head and to see his children murdered. He actually said this. And now he continues to run for office, and most people continue to back him. But he said he wants his man shot. He said shot in the head and to see his children murdered. And they keep running. Pretty amazing, right? That's a bad one. Let's see how that turns out, but that's a really bad one. Nobody's heard that one before. Especially in the wake of Charlie's assassination, our country must have absolutely no tolerance for this radical left violence, extremism, and terror. We're done with the angry mobs, and we're not going to let our cities be unsafe. We're going to make sure our cities are safe. When you have Chicago, where they had 4,000 people murdered over a very short period of time, 4,000 people, and then we have a governor stand up and say, "Oh, things are going swimmingly." No, they're not. We're going to make Chicago safe, just like we're going to make. Look what we did in D.C. It's so nice that we started here, because this was one of the most violent places in the United States. It'd be dangerous to be right out here. But you couldn't go to a restaurant. The restaurants were all dying. The whole place was dying. You'd have these gorgeous, look at the Washington Monument over there. You'd have these gorgeous buildings and monuments and structures. And people were afraid to leave their apartment. They were afraid to go to work. They'd get into an Uber and they'd feel safe, and then the Uber would be attacked. They thought they made it to safety, and then the Uber was attacked on the trip in. But we've done a great job, and now it's considered a totally safe city. We haven't had problems. It took us 12 days to make it great. We took out, Pam, 1,700 hard criminals, career criminals in many cases, but these are hardened criminals. Many of them came in through the Biden open borders. We brought them back to the countries. And a couple were so violent that we put them in jail. We don't want to take a chance that they could get back in, because no matter how good we do, somebody can sneak in. They were so violent and so bad. One arrested 28 times. Every time he left prison, he'd get into a violent incident. 28 times. And we put him away for a long time. But we're done with the angry mobs. We're done with it. This is such an unbelievable place right now. You take a look where you can walk down the middle of the street with your wife or your husband. Your children can walk. They can walk alone. It doesn't matter. They can walk anywhere in Washington, and they're safe now. If this were a year ago, they'd have a serious chance of being badly hurt, even killed. They'd come in from Indiana, they'd come in from Iowa, they'd come from Florida to see their nation's capital, and somebody would have to call the parents, "I'm sorry, but your son or your daughter's been killed." Not anymore. You hear those sirens going off? That's good. That's a good sound. That means they either got the bad guy or they're going to stop the bad guy. You didn't hear that sound because nobody wanted to do anything. Nobody. Listen to the beauty of that sound. Seriously. And that's the real deal sirens. They're not politically correct sirens. You hear them, they're about 3 miles away. That's great. What a beautiful sound. They're stopping crime. That's what they're doing. So we're done with the voices of fools. They're fools. And death threats, and we're going to make our cities safe. And I thought it was Charlie's, one of his biggest dreams was that he couldn't believe it. Chicago is going to be a great city again. We've already, we sent people in there 6 months ago, and this governor said, well, crime is down. Yeah, that's because we had the FBI in there for 6 months, just preparing it for the bigger surge. And they've done a great job, the cash and the FBI. They've done a great job, and they love doing it. They love being able to do it. They were restricted from doing it. They couldn't do anything. And now they're totally unrestricted. All they have to do is stop crime, and they're doing it. By the way, Memphis, as you know, you heard they went in about a week ago. One of the most dangerous places in the country. It's really in the world. It's not just the country. They have very few cities that would compare to some of these cities. You go to Afghanistan, you say, oh, that's unsafe. Well, the crime numbers are much better than the crime numbers in places that we have. So Memphis, I understand, is doing unbelievably in 1 week. It's like a different place. And this took 12 days. And then after that, we just perfected it. But after 12 days, we had good safety here. After 1 month, it's like, it's really amazing. And by the way, restaurants are booming. Restaurants are opening up. The big problem we have, you can't get into a restaurant in D.C. anymore. So they're opening up. It's a beautiful thing to see. It's called safety. It's called law enforcement and letting them do their job. And that's why I said last month that I have directed the Attorney General and the Department of Homeland Security to confront the very real threat of left-wing terrorism in our country. It's a real threat. Not when you confront it, it's not, because they're not brave people. In fact, they're cowards. When you confront them, they immediately fold. You have to see them fold. You have to see them crying. They fold. But it includes dismantling the networks that fund them and finance them, and we're finding out who those networks are. We already know quite a few of them. When you see these violent incidents and then you see people holding this gorgeous sign with beautiful wood, beautiful cardboard, wood, everything's perfect paint job, and they're all the same. There are thousands of them. You know that they weren't made in the basement out of love. They were made by anarchists, and in some cases wealthy. I'll probably find some of my nice friends that are up there being so nice to me, especially lately. They're being very nice. But it surprises you who they may be, and you almost wonder why would they do it? But they're hurting our country, and we're really taking it back one by one. If we didn't go into Los Angeles early on in the administration, the commissioner, the chief of police, Los Angeles, said if they didn't go in, we would have lost our city. Now, they already lost 25,000 houses to fire because they wouldn't let the water come in from the Pacific Northwest, which they should have done. I said, you better do it. They didn't do it, and we had 25,000 homes where they had no water in their sprinklers. They had no water in the fire hydrants. It would have been a different kind of a thing if they did what they were supposed to do. We had to break in. We broke in and had the water come down. They said for the environment, great, they lost 25,000 houses. It's incredible. But the commissioner said without the federal government and President Trump's intervention, we would have lost the entire city. And we have the Olympics going there soon. I got the Olympics. We have the Olympics. We have the World Cup. And we have, most importantly, we have the 250th anniversary of our country. That's going to be most important. And all of these things are happening. And we're going to have safe cities. We're going to have very, very safe cities. So 1 month after Charlie's death, we still feel the terrible shock and the pain of his loss, like just about nobody I can think of. Charlie Kirk was one of a kind. He was unstoppable. And he really was. Boy, when he had an idea in his head, he would call me, sir, please, you haven't done it yet. I said, Charlie, relax. Just relax. He didn't relax. He'd call me the next day again. It got it done. But he was like indomitable and always will be. He's really irreplaceable. Nobody can replace him. But they're going to do great. But you can't replace that kind of person and that kind of talent, frankly. The word talent is an important word, but that kind of talent. So we hold his memory in our hearts forever. Every single day of this administration, we will continue to carry out the mission for which he lived, and he really did. He lived for this country. He lived for his wife and his family, but he lived for this country too. In Charlie's honor, we will continue like we have been to fight, and to win. We're going to win so much. So the Presidential Medal of Freedom is a big deal. You have the Congressional Medal of Honor, military, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is civilian. And the Presidential Medal of Freedom is a really big deal. Very few people get it. Very few people, frankly, qualify. It's a decision of the president, but it's a qualification that's a very hard one to get. And I would like to ask, if I might, the military aide to read Charles James Kirk's citation for the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The Presidential Medal of Freedom is awarded to Charles James Kirk. Accepting on behalf of Charlie is his wife, Mrs. Erica Kirk. Charlie Kirk was one of the most influential American political figures of his generation. At just 18 years old, he founded Turning Point USA and grew it into the largest conservative youth organization in the nation. For over a decade, he tirelessly traveled the country, leading a movement to restore respect for our founding principles, reawaken our national identity, and inspire a renewed spirit of religious devotion. He was one of the great debaters and communicators of his time. Despite receiving repeated threats, he remained undeterred and modeled courage, logic, humor, and grace to the next generation. On September 10th, 2025, at age 31, Charlie Kirk was assassinated while addressing a group of students. The United States honors him as a martyr for truth and freedom.
Thank you, Mr. President, for honoring my husband in such a profound and meaningful way. And thank you for making this event a priority amid the peace process in the Middle East. Thank you. Very grateful. Charlie always admired your commitment to freedom, and that's something that both of you shared. So thank you. Your support of our family and the work that Charlie devoted his life to will be something I cherish forever. So thank you. To our gracious First Lady and her office for making this event possible. Thank you as well. It's beautiful. To Vice President and the lovely Usha fans, your friendship has been an unbelievable encouragement. Thank you. And to all our friends and family that are here and watching from all around the world, thank you for loving us. Thank you for praying for us and for believing in what Charlie believed in. And to our Turning Point USA staff and the Charlie Kirk Show staff, we love you more than you could ever know. And to the Turning Point USA chapters that are watching all across America right now, you are the heartbeat of this future and of this movement. Everything that Charlie built, you guys are the legacy holders of that. You are living proof that his mission did not die with him. It lives through you. And Charlie always said the next generation will decide whether freedom endures. And because of you, I know that freedom will endure. It will. And today we're gathered not only to celebrate Charlie's birthday, but to honor a truth that he gave his entire life to defend, and that's freedom. The very existence of the Presidential Medal of Freedom reminds us that the national interest of the United States has always been freedom. Our founders etched it into the preamble of our Constitution, and those words are not relics on parchment. They are a living covenant. The blessings of liberty are not man's invention, they are God's endowment. Charlie lived for those blessings, not as abstract words, but as sacred promises. He used to love to journal about this topic all the time, and with such a heart postured of gratitude. And he believed that liberty was both a right and a responsibility. And he used to say, freedom is the ability to do what is right without fear. And that's how he lived. He was free from fear. He was free from compromise, free from anything that could enslave his soul. His name, Charles, literally means free man. And that's exactly who my husband was. He was a free man. And from the time I met him, sitting across from him, being interviewed on politics and philosophy and theology, anything that Charlie loved, any topic he loved. And I just saw the fire in his soul, and there was this divine restlessness within him that came from knowing God placed him on this earth to protect something very, very sacred for all of us. And he never stopped fighting for people to experience freedom. He didn't. Charlie often said that without God, freedom becomes chaos. And he believed liberty could only survive when anchored to truth. And I remember in one of his speeches, he told the audience that the opposite of liberty isn't law. He said it's captivity. And that the freest people in the world are those whose hearts belong to Christ. But what's so powerful is that Charlie had the ability to communicate so brilliantly across all generations. And he reminded us that in a world that tells us freedom is doing whatever you want to do, the real freedom is the power to live freely and to do what is right. And in one of his journal entries, he wrote that he wanted everyone to know that you can't have liberty without moral responsibility. Freedom divorced from faith eventually just destroys itself. And what's so fascinating about all of this is looking back these past 12 years of Turning Point USA and his mission, there's almost this veil of sacredness. Because what I realize is that while he was building an organization, he was also building a movement. One that called people back to God, back to truth, and a movement that was filled with courage. And ironically, for a man who impacted millions, Charlie never desired to be the center of attention. He just wasn't. My husband was not a man of extravagance. He loved simple but deeply meaningful things. Truly. He loved his late night walks. He loved buying more books than he could ever read because he felt there was no such thing as a book budget. And he loved being able to read to our kids the same bedtime story on repeat because he knew it was their favorite. And but to him that was special. And he loved to sit in the sun on a Saturday morning with his cup of decaf coffee, and his phone was off because he was honoring the Sabbath. And for him, it was that moment to catch his breath and just be in peace, because he was unreachable at the moment. And he preferred quiet birthdays. But that never stopped me from telling him. I told him every single year, I said, baby, I love your birthday. I said, because it's the day that God knew the world couldn't go another day without you. And so the rhythm of our usual birthday celebration for him was mint ice cream, mint chocolate chip ice cream. He only had it twice a year, on his birthday and 4th of July. It's just, and then after that, it was back to work as usual. But last year, his one birthday wish was to see the Oregon Ducks play the Ohio State. And they won. Oregon won that night. And it was by far one of the most memorable nights of his birthday experience of his life until today. And so, honestly, President Trump, I have spent 7.5 years trying to find the perfect birthday gift for Charlie. And it's so difficult. And those of you that have spouses or loved ones, you know how difficult it is sometimes to buy a gift for someone that you love, because he wasn't a materialistic man, so that also did not help. But now I can say with confidence, Mr. President, that you have given him the best birthday gift he could ever have.
Thank you.
It's such an honor, and the recognition of a life lived for defending freedom. And that's what Charlie fought for until his last breath. And it was written across his chest in those final moments on one of his simple t-shirts that always carried a message, and this one bearing a single word, freedom. That was the banner over his life, and that shirt was a declaration. The same declaration he made in every speech, every campus visit, every time he shared the gospel at a church, every sleepless night that he would spend praying for the youth of this nation and planning for the future of our country, and just impressing upon them that when we defend liberty, we defend the soul of our nation. My husband never told anyone what to say. He never did. He never told anyone what to say. He would just encourage them to think. He would encourage them to think outside of the traditional political labels. He would want them to think in a way that was anchored in wisdom and truth. But he would never tell anyone what to say. Charlie wasn't content to simply admire freedom. He wanted to multiply it. He wanted to multiply freedom. He wanted young people to taste it and to understand it and defend it. He wanted them to see that liberty isn't self-indulgence, it's self-governance under God. He wanted them to see that. And every day I'd see him getting ready for work. He'd put on his cross necklace, he'd put his ring on his finger. And the boldness in his demeanor was always fearlessness. He wasn't afraid. He was never afraid. In his daily actions, whether in office or on campus or at a church, it was always without fear. That was his creed. That is how he lived out every single day. He didn't fear being slandered. He did not. He didn't fear losing friends, I can tell you that. He didn't. He didn't care. He stood for truth and stood for freedom, and he did not, everything else was just noise to him. And it's because his confidence in Christ was absolute. That's why. There was no limit to what he would have sacrificed to defend freedom for all. And if the moment had come, he probably would have run for president, but not out of ambition. He would only have done it if that was something that he believed that his country needed from a servant's heart standpoint. And Charlie lived only 31 short years. I was 32, but on this side of heaven, but he lived. He lived every single second he lived. He filled every single day with purpose, and he fought for truth when it was unpopular. And he stood for God when it was costly, but that's what we're called to do. Surprisingly enough, he did pray for his enemies, which is very hard, but he did. He did. He did. No one else, I saw him do it. No, he never did it in front of anyone else, but I can attest to that. But he also loved people when it was inconvenient. And he ran his race with endurance, and he kept the faith. And now he wears the crown of a righteous martyr. And for me and for our children, the truth really studies our grief, because heaven gained what earth could no longer contain: a free man made fully free. And to all watching, this is not a ceremony. This is a commissioning. And my message is simple. I want you to be the embodiment of this medal. I do. I want you to free yourself from fear. I want you to stand courageously in the truth. Listen for the still, small voice of God. And remember that while freedom is inherited in this country, each of us must be intentional stewards every single day. God began a mighty work through my husband, and I intend to see it through. And the torch is in our hands now. It's in mine, it's in yours, it's in all of yours, it's in all the students with Turning Point USA. And before I close, I'll share with you that I asked our daughter what she would like to say to Daddy for his birthday. Excuse me. She said, "Happy birthday, Daddy. I want to give you a stuffed animal. I want you to eat a cupcake with ice cream. And I want you to go have a birthday surprise. I love you," that's what she said. And while our son is precious, he can't yet speak, in classic Kirk family fashion, his actions spoke louder than his words. And his gift to you, Charlie, and myself for that matter, was deciding to become the man of the house and be fully potty trained at 16 months. But Charlie, baby, I know that you're celebrating in heaven today, but gosh, I miss you. We miss you. And we love you, and we promise we'll make you proud. And Charlie's life was proof that freedom is not a theory, it's a testimony. He showed us that liberty begins not in the halls of power, but in the man of a heart surrendered to God. And so today, as we honor Charlie with this incredible Presidential Medal of Freedom on his birthday, I stand here with tears and just a humbled heart and spirit, because his story reminds us all that to live free is the greatest gift, but to die free is the greatest victory. Happy birthday, my Charlie. Happy Freedom Day. God bless you.
Senate will come to order. Chaplain Dr. Black will lead the Senate in prayer.
Let us pray. O God, who has spread out the heavens and marches on the waves of the sea, your great works are too marvelous to understand. Lord, thank you for your prevailing providence that sustains us. Thank you for the ceasefire between Gaza and Israel, for the joyful return of hostages, and for the prospect of an even more enduring peace in the Middle East. Lord, strengthen our lawmakers. Empower them to mount up on wings like eagles. Make them one in the common cause of justice, righteousness, and truth. And Lord, bring a ceasefire to our legislative combat. We pray in your loving name. Amen.
Will you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Under the previous order, the Senate will be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move to proceed to calendar number 168, H.R. 5371.
The clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to calendar number 168, H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Iowa.
as we all know, the last of the living hostages taken into Gaza by terrorists on October the 7th, 2 years ago, have now been returned to their families. We can all say, praise the Lord. I think we all know that this would not have happened without the persistent and skilled leadership of President Trump. The deal that President Trump was able to strike involves a ceasefire and withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza, with Hamas not allowed to resume control of Gaza. Remember, the only reason the Israeli Defense Forces entered Gaza in the first place was because Hamas planned a horrific attack on peaceful Israeli communities, killing over 1,200 people, including 46 Americans. The Israeli Defense Force has found written instructions from the leaders of Hamas in Gaza, instructing terrorists to broadcast their sadistic torture and killing of Israeli civilians, to strike fear in the hearts of Israelis and to destabilize the country. Hamas also thought those images would set off an uprising in the West Bank and with fellow Iranian-backed terrorist groups in the region, with the ultimate goal of destroying Israel. Once again, Israel destroyed those who sought Israel's destruction. I have sympathy for everyone who has suffered from Hamas's rule of Gaza, Israelis and Palestinians alike, and other people as well. However, those who called for unilateral ceasefire without the release of all hostages while leaving Hamas in charge of Gaza cannot call themselves anti-war, because this would reward Hamas for starting that war. What made this ceasefire possible was President Trump's diplomatic efforts with others in the Arab world to pressure Hamas into accepting that they must give up power. It is vital that our partners in the Arab world and throughout the West maintain a consistent message that terrorism will not be rewarded. Israel is here to stay. Those who dreamed of its destruction need to accept that fact, that Israel is here to stay, and learn to live in peace. This is the only way for real and lasting peace. And while I'm at it, we ought to think of another Trump success in his first term, and that's the Abraham Accords. If the principle behind the Abraham Accords can be accepted by other Arab nations, besides peace, there will be a great economic benefit to all nations.
Returned to Israel and reunited with their loved ones. To see the peace process moving forward is an occasion for immense gratitude. And I hope that both sides will adhere to the terms of the agreement so that this can mark the beginning of an end to the bloodshed. And that includes the prompt and respectful return by Hamas of the remains of the deceased hostages. I know that President Trump, without whom this would not have happened, Secretary Rubio and others continue to work to hammer out the remaining steps of the peace process. That will have to include disarming Hamas and ensuring that the organization plays no future role in governance in the Gaza Strip. My prayers are with the President, with Secretary Rubio, and all of those on both sides who are working to make peace a reality. Mr. President, quote, "Every day gets better for us," end quote. So said the Democrat leader in an interview published on Thursday hours before Democrats once again voted to keep the government closed and to deny service members a paycheck. Federal workers, including law enforcement officers, missed part of their pay last Friday. But hey, at least life is getting better for Senate Democrats. Mr. President, a CNN article from Thursday said that Democrats are preparing to keep on with this shutdown for, and I quote, several more weeks. I guess Democrats are not going to be satisfied until military families and government workers are lining up at food banks or visiting payday lenders or simply charging necessary items like milk and bread on their credit cards to be repaid later if they can, along with the big interest charges that come with that. But hey, while military families and government workers may be deeply stressed, at least life is getting better every day for Senate Democrats. Mr. President, I could at least understand a little bit more where Democrats are coming from if Republicans were asking them to swallow a lot of new Republican policies to reopen the government. But Republicans aren't asking Democrats for anything. We're not asking them to support any new Republican policies. We're not asking them to swallow any partisan policy riders. We have put forward, and the House has passed, a clean, nonpartisan CR. That's the bill Democrats are rejecting. And by the way, you certainly don't have to take my word for it that we put forward a clean bill. Here's what one mainstream news publication said last week, and I quote, "It's important to note that Democrats instigated this shutdown. They rejected a clean funding proposal and demanded significant and expensive health care policy changes in exchange for their votes," end quote. It's important to note that Democrats instigated this shutdown. They rejected a clean funding proposal and demanded significant and expensive health care policy changes in exchange for their votes, end quote. Yeah, that pretty much captures it right there in a nutshell, Mr. President. Now, Democrats like to whine that Republicans aren't negotiating, but negotiation, Mr. President, is what you do when each side has a list of demands and you need to meet in the middle. Republicans, as I and a lot of other people have pointed out, haven't put forward any demands. Only Democrats have made demands. And by the way, very expensive demands. And they've taken government funding hostage in an attempt to force through their partisan measures. Mr. President, I remember when Democrats used to care about the effects of a government shutdown. In fact, I could fill a whole speech, many speeches actually, with quotes from Democrats talking about how terrible shutdowns are. I used to think they were sincere in those opinions, but it's become abundantly clear that their previous statements weren't based on principle, but on political advantage. Democrats were against shutdowns when it suited their political purposes, and now that it suits their political purposes, they think, to keep the government closed, now they support shutdowns. I suspect their political calculations are flawed, because after all, 65% of voters think Democrats should reopen the government instead of holding out for their partisan demands. But I guess, Mr. President, Democrats are more worried about gaining the approval of their far-left base than about getting the approval of everyday Americans. Mr. President, it's day 14 of Democrat shutdown. Our economy is losing billions of dollars. Federal workers, including law enforcement officers, are going without pay. Critical government programs are in jeopardy. But hey, at least life is getting better every day for Senate Democrats. Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks.
Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the majority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today is day 14 of the Schumer shutdown, and Democrats continue to betray the American people. Let me read some of the headlines I've seen over the last several days. The Military Times writes, military families seek out food assistance during shutdown anxiety. An Axios headline warns that there could be insufficient funds for food stamps. A local New York TV station reports, quote, government shutdowns threatens food access for Long Island's most vulnerable. And the Wall Street Journal reads, thin air traffic staffing spurs delays at U.S. airports. Anxiety, concerns about food, concerns about our airports. These are real-life impacts, Mr. President, of the Schumer shutdown. And the pain is getting worse each and every day. And what does Senator Schumer do? He treats it as a game. A game, Mr. President. Lives are in the balance. He treats it as a game. He bragged about shutting down the government. Bragged about it. It was carefully planned. And in a carefully planned interview with Punchbowl News, he gloated. He said, every day gets better for us. That's what Schumer said. Every day gets better for us. Who is the us? Certainly not the American people. The Washington Post pointed out this is a dangerous political game because, Mr. President, it really matters to the American people, even though it may be just a game being played by the Democrats in this body. You take a look at this and say, whose lives are getting better every day? Certainly not the lives of the men and women in uniform who are worried about their paychecks. They're the ones that protect our country. It's not our Border Patrol agents. Oh, no, it's not getting better for them each and every day, Mr. President. They're busy keeping out illegal immigrants. It's not the air traffic controllers who keep our skies safe. No, it's not getting better for them each and every day. It's not the military families who are lining up at food banks. Oh, no, it's not getting better for them every day, Mr. President. So I ask again, when Chuck Schumer tells the press, every day it's getting better for us, whose lives are getting better by what he is doing and the Democrats are doing to the American people? Whose lives are getting better every day because of the Schumer shutdown? It's not the American people. Mr. President, it's fascinating. You know, we go home on weekends, we talk to people at home. They're concerned about what's happening to their lives during the time of a government shutdown. They're not worried, but are concerned about what they see happening here in Washington, where they see the Democrats beholden to the far left, radical, extreme, dangerous, scary wing of the party. Because that's what's happening here in this body. You look across the aisle, we see an entire group of Democrats being held hostage. Who is this group? Well, it's the Marxist, anti-ICE, anti-America wing of the Democrat Party that are controlling the party. The us, the minority leader is talking about are them. That's who he's talking about. They're running the Democrat Party right now. And in the process, they're running our country into the ground. In the same interview that Senator Schumer gave last week to Punchbowl News when he said it's getting better for them, every day it's getting better for them, he also said, and admitted, he said, we thought about this long in advance. The far left wing of the party, long in advance, planned for this shutdown. And they did it with Chuck Schumer in his office. They organized a war room. They orchestrated this shutdown that brought all of this pain on the American people. The minority leader handed the reins to that far left wing, and now they're the ones riding the stagecoach. And they're driving the stagecoach over the cliff. And it's a mistake, and it's an error, and it's hurting the American people, and they don't seem to care because they're treating it as a game, even though it's a dangerous game, as the Washington Post points out. So what does all this mean in this big political game? Well, there's one person who's really trying to save their own hide, and we know that that's the minority leader, especially as we get closer to this radical rally that's scheduled in Washington on October 18th. Democrats don't want to disappoint the radicals who are descending upon this city next weekend. This is the far-left activist group. It's called Indivisible. You may have heard of it, Mr. President. This is what one of the organizers of the radical rally had to say. He said the head of the group clearly exposed their threat to the minority leader. He said millions will be out there cheering on, or they'll be calling for new leadership. And they're controlling the party. They're calling the tune, and we see the Democrats dance, not for the American people, but for the far left wing of their party. And they're holding the reins. They're telling the minority leader, you keep this shutdown going, or you pack up your office and leave. They don't seem to care that the American people are suffering. Not one bit. What we see is a minority leader playing politics and choosing politics as a game over doing what's right for the American people. And the Democrats are playing a dangerous game, and it's hurting all of us. And why are they playing the game? Because one of them is trying to use it for political gain. We can end this shutdown today. We're going to have a vote here this afternoon, Mr. President, an opportunity to end the shutdown. And the pain and the suffering and the anxiety that American people are feeling. When I say American people, I'm talking about American citizens who are all around the world defending us, keeping us free. All we're asking is for a vote on a clean, continuing resolution. The Democrats did it 13 times when Joe Biden was in the White House. They're not willing to do it now because they have an organized, orchestrated plan to shut down the government, keep it shut down. Now, some Democrats have voted with us. We've had a bipartisan group, 53 votes that we've had. We need 5 more Democrats. I don't expect the minority leader to ever join that group to open the government, ever, no matter how obvious it is, how necessary it is, how much pain he is causing. But that's what we have and then we're facing today, and we have a chance just this afternoon, Mr. President, 5:30 this afternoon on a vote of this body to pick up and pass a bipartisan bill, continuing resolution, that they've done 13 times in the House and the Senate when Joe Biden was president. And yet the Democrats in this body have been voting no time after time after time. We need a few more Democrats, a few who care about helping the American people and care more about helping the American people than they do about helping the minority leader. He has a political disaster on his hands. That's not a problem for all of us, but we're suffering the consequences of the toxicity of that position of the minority leader within his own party in his effort to try to find absolution at a time causing significant pain, grief for American people who are struggling to get by, facing a loss of paychecks, a loss of nutrition, a loss of care for their children, a loss of help for small businesses. You can go down the list. All of this could be resolved today with a simple vote for a continuing resolution to open the government once again. That's what we should do today, Mr. President. That's the right thing for this body and a right thing for our country. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor. Suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobro.
So, Mr. President, I'd like to begin today by underscoring some really wonderful news. Yesterday, the last living hostages brutally held by the vicious Hamas organization were released. And now they are back home, finally, with their loved ones. This is an immense, overwhelming sigh of relief for everyone. I commend the enormous advocacy of the tireless hostage families and all who helped make this moment happen. Over the last 2 years, I've gotten to know many of these hostage families well. I've been inspired by their strength and their courage and their persistence. They never gave up. They were here all the time. in bringing their loved ones home. And now, after so long, so much pain, so many sleepless nights, it warms my heart to see the joyous images of those families and many others reuniting with their loved ones. But as we all know, there's still a whole lot of work to be done. I remain fully committed to bringing home the remains of all the hostages who have died in captivity, essential in Jewish law and Jewish burial, including the remains of my two constituents, Omer Nutra and Itai Hen. Hirsch Goldberg, Poland's mother Rachel, reminded us of the beautiful Jewish teaching during Sukkot that sums up this moment so fiercely. She said, "There's a time to sob, and there's a time to dance, and we have to do both right now." Of course, they lost their loved one. They lost their child. This ceasefire represents a real opportunity to finally ensure a lasting end to this painful war, to surge humanitarian assistance and relief to the suffering Palestinians in Gaza, to make progress on negotiations for stability and governance in Gaza, to ensure this is more than just a temporary ceasefire. And finally, to build a lasting peace, ultimately through a two-state solution. For the last year on this floor, I told both the Trump administration, the Netanyahu administration, and everybody else that the best and only long-term solution to ultimate long-term peace in the Middle East is a two-state solution. Well, now there's a potential opening to get that, and everyone involved must move in that direction, even if we have to move mountains. It ensures security, prosperity, and dignity for Israelis and Palestinians alike. Only then will a true peace be realized. On Argentina, if Americans want to know just how little Donald Trump seems to care about their health care, look at what he's doing today in the Oval Office. As we speak, the administration is approving $20 billion in taxpayer dollars to bail out Argentina in the middle of a shutdown. I have just one question. If this administration has $20 billion to spare for a MAGA-friendly foreign government, how can they say we don't have the money to lower health care costs here at home? The overwhelming majority of Americans say we need help with our health care, and they're busy spending $20 billion because Trump seems to really like the leader of Argentina. They're both sort of MAGA types. The administration is giving this money away to help Argentina's hard-right president in his election, where his party is in serious trouble. It's a bailout, it's nonsensical, and at the same time, the American people are frightened, scared, worried about losing their health care. It makes no sense to give money to Argentina and then say we don't have enough money to help Americans with health care. It is so against what Americans want. I'm sure if we had a vote here in this country, it would be 99-1 almost that the money belongs here. And that's what we should be focused on. Meanwhile, farmers across America are looking at this Argentina bailout on one side and wondering whose side the administration is on. It's been a devastating year for our soybean farmers because this administration has bungled trade talks with Beijing, and as a consequence, they've killed our soybean exports to that country. Now, China is looking precisely to Argentina to cut new soybean deals, while our farmers at home suffer backbreaking losses. And on top of all that, you mean to tell me the administration's fine sending $20 billion of taxpayer dollars to help foreign farmers compete against American farmers here at home in the middle of a shutdown? It's insane, utterly insane. This Argentina bailout is a slap in the face to both American farmers and to working families worried about keeping their health care. So I'll say it again. If this administration has $20 billion to spare for a MAGA-friendly foreign government, they cannot turn around and say we don't have the money to lower health care costs here at home, because those costs are going through the roof. On the shutdown. On day 14 of the Trump shutdown, I want to remind everybody why we're here in the first place. Democrats have made it very clear, day in, day out, we want to open the government and have a serious negotiation to fix the healthcare premium crisis that is set to wallop the American people. Nearly everyone agrees that looming ACA premium hikes is a devastating problem. The public knows it, we Democrats know it, the White House privately knows it, and even many Republicans here in Congress know it. They admit it. And yet, Republicans remain dug in and insist there's nothing to negotiate when it comes to health care, that they won't even sit down and talk with Democrats about it. That makes no sense. That's not the way we always get our CRs done. The Republican leader has now scheduled 7 votes on the Republican partisan CR, and it has failed to secure enough votes to pass this chamber each time. That means, like it or not, the Republican leader needs to work with Democrats in a bipartisan way to reopen the government, just as we did when we passed 13 CRs when I was majority leader. Last week, we saw what happens when Republicans choose to work with Democrats in a serious way. We passed the NDAA with the National Defense Bill, with a strong bipartisan vote. We need the same enthusiasm from Republicans that we saw in the NDA here in the health care issue. And of course, the biggest roadblock right now to reopening the government is the Speaker of the House. The Speaker has now kept Congress on vacation for 3 weeks. It's just incredible. Government workers must work without getting paid. House Republicans get paid without working. Johnson continues to insist there is nothing to negotiate. But I want to make one point very clear. Republican leaders can say all they want, there's nothing to negotiate. But if Republicans don't change course, then very soon 20 million Americans are going to face financial catastrophe when their health care premiums go through the roof. And many more Americans will face it than the 20 million, but 20 million are right on the front lines here because of the ACA. That is reality Republicans can't make disappear by just digging in. The ACA premium crisis is not a fix-it-later issue, but rather a fix-it-now issue, because open enrollment starts in less than a month. Window shopping has already begun in several states where people have the awful choice. Should I go without health care altogether with my family? What if my kid or my spouse or myself gets sick? Or should I cut back on almost everything else because I need to pay huge increases in my health care insurance? So Republicans may think they can dig in until the next ice age, but a fork in the road is coming their way whether they like it or not. Either work with Democrats to fix ACA premiums or sit by as 20 million Americans pay thousands of dollars more out of pocket. If Republicans remain dug in, the American people will hold them responsible for rising health care costs. If Republicans do nothing, then they will be the ones triggering a massive health care panic that will be felt from coast to coast. This is a non-negotiable fact. Democrats want to avoid reaching that point. We want to work in a serious way with our Republican colleagues and with President Trump to diffuse this healthcare crisis before it starts. But we're running out of time. Now, I want to close by speaking briefly on an extremely disturbing report I just read in Politico. Earlier today, Politico published a story purporting to show thousands of private messages containing racist, sexist, and violent comments from young Republican leaders across the country. The leaked conversations are revolting. They make you want to throw up. They include comments supposedly from young Republican leaders saying things like, quote, "I love Hitler." Can you believe it? They include gas chamber jokes. How sick. They include racist obscenities, including the N-word. They include jokes about sexual assault. Many of these individuals who have allegedly made these comments have positions of leadership in the young Republican organization. It's hard to believe. You can't make this up. And it's awful. It's revolting. It's disgusting. It's obnoxious. It's the kind of garbage the worst kinds of people say when they think no one is watching. If this report is accurate, every single Republican leader from President Trump on down, including every Republican senator, including the Republican National Committee, ought to condemn these comments swiftly and unequivocally. And the people should no longer have any position of power in any Republican organization. People who said it. At this delicate political moment, Mr. President, party leaders of all sides have an obligation to speak out against this kind of violent and vile rhetoric. Republicans, leaders cannot be silent if these sickening reports are true. I yield the floor.
Well known around the country because it's a detention facility for ICE. And I'd been there many times in the past. Every Friday morning, two wonderful women, Sister Pat, Sister Joanne, used to go to the Broadview facility and pray a rosary and then go inside and say goodbye to the detainees who were being deported on planes that very morning. It was a peaceful and reassuring experience because so many people were praying for those folks who were going to see their lives turned upside down. And the people who ran the facility couldn't have been more cooperative. They had a lawful responsibility, but they did not object to my entering the Broadview facility in years gone by, saying goodbye to the detainees and a few words of encouragement with the nuns who would accompany me. And it became a kind of a ritual which we were very proud of. How things have changed. How things have changed. Senator Duckworth and I were simply asking if we could go inside and see what the facility looked like. Reports are that though there seem to be large groups of people moving through there are only 2 cells and 1 bathroom. Those are the sorts of things which are part of oversight for us to look at facilities and make sure they're humane, consistent with our values. But unfortunately, over and over again, ICE has refused to allow Senator Duckworth and myself access to their operations in Chicago. I don't understand why. If they thought these operations were compliant with the law and accomplishing something good for America, they would certainly want the people to see them who are responsible for funding their agency. The opposite's been true. It was 3 or 4 weeks ago, we went up to the Great Lakes Naval Training Station north of Chicago because it had been disclosed that they were leasing a building to ICE. Senator Duckworth and I went there because this is a critically important Department of Defense facility. Every sailor in the United States Navy goes through training at Great Lakes, every one of them. And we're very proud of the good work that's done to train them to serve our nation. We wanted to know what ICE was going to do if they came to Great Lakes Naval Training Station as they promised. We have a legitimate concern. Every Thursday, 900 to 1,000 of these sailors go through a graduation ceremony, a commencement ceremony. And their proud parents sit in bleachers with the cameras following the events of the day, which are historic for each family. So we understand with 900 to 1,000 graduates, families come from all over the United States to witness this moment in family history that will be talked about forever, the day that their son or daughter graduated from Great Lakes. And we were concerned if ICE is going to go through and check everybody who looks suspicious, the Kavanaugh test, do they look like they're Hispanic? What impact is that going to have on Great Lakes, on the men and women who work there, on the young graduates of the training course? What impact would that have if someone decided from ICE to start asking for identification, papers, passports, driver's license of those sitting in the bleachers? It's not beyond the realm of possibility. In fact, it's a very real possibility because we're watching what ICE is doing in the city of Chicago. It's terrible. It's indefensible. It's embarrassing. I don't know if the ICE agents who are responsible for this conduct have been well trained, whether they're veterans of the force, or whether they answered the ads that show up on Chicago television all the time that if you'll sign up for ICE, we'll give you a $50,000 check, a bonus to sign up. I don't know who's signing up. I don't know how many are signing up. ICE and the Department of Homeland Security refused to disclose that to Congress or to the American people. They say it's justified. It's justified for the tactics that they're using, wearing masks with no insignia on their person that shows that they work for any federal agency whatsoever. They justify this by saying it's so dangerous in the city of Chicago. Dangerous in the city of Chicago. I thought about that this weekend. They say in criticism of Chicago that people are fleeing the forces of violence. Well, there was some fleeing going on in Chicago this weekend. 53,000 runners came for the Chicago Marathon. We're told that it's so dangerous in the city of Chicago that this president has to send National Guard volunteers in from the state of Texas, who've been federalized and controlled by the federal government. 53,000 runners and over 500,000 tourists. Dangerous city, not what I see. Can we do better when it comes to reducing crime? You bet. And isn't that true for just about every city in America? When it gets down to it, the danger is not in the streets in the city of Chicago. The danger is what's happening when troops are being sent in to stand on street corners with rifles. Listen, I'm a fan of the National Guard. Tammy Duckworth, who was with me, spent 23 years in the Guard before she was shot down over Iraq. She loves those Guardsmen and women, considers them her brothers and sisters. I'm sorry that they're being dragged into this political theater created by President Trump. But the reality is, what the ICE agents are doing in the city of Chicago is nothing short of outrageous. Innocent people involved in peaceful, constitutional, legal conduct are being assaulted by these officers. We live in an age of cell phones and videos. This is not something that we're making up. It's on the news every night. And the people of Chicago resent it, and they should, and I join them in that feeling. Yes, follow the law, but to abuse people who are simply there to protest the presence of these ICE forces, that is guaranteed acceptable and legal by our Constitution. Article 1 of the Bill of Rights makes that very clear. So we left water for the volunteers who were there and those who are participating. We asked to go into the Broadview facility, and once again we were turned down. And we're doing our best to make sure we continue to keep an eye on what's happening. Restaurants in Chicago feel that the ICE agents are making things worse, not better. They've started putting notices on the windows and doors and entries to some restaurants that ICE agents are not welcome, and for good reason. When ICE shows up, people know it. Word spreads quickly, and people flee and hide for fear what's going to happen to them. That's the reality of the strategy in Chicago, and it's a strategy which has to come to an end and should very soon. If these men and women who are representing our government and ICE are proud of what they're going to do, let's have full disclosure. Let's find out what they've done, how they're spending the billions of dollars we're sending their way, and why that money isn't being spent on law enforcement now. If you want to help reduce crime and violent crime and murder, work with the police and law enforcement. But no, that's not what the administration wants to do. They want their own show. They want their own theater. I've tried to visit these facilities many times. Once again, I was disappointed this last Friday. But that's not the end of my effort. As long as I'm serving in this capacity, I will accept my constitutional responsibility to watch how the money is being spent. On Saturday, I spoke to peaceful protesters who've been demonstrating in Broadview for weeks. I went to St. Eulalia Church, which is just on the outskirts of Chicago near Broadview. Hundreds of people showed up at that church to begin a procession, a holy procession, to the Broadview facility and ask if they could be allowed to go in. If not, if they could distribute communion among the demonstrators as well as law enforcement who were there. It was a peaceful demonstration, and I was proud to be part of it. It was an effort to bring to light publicly what is going on and to make it clear that Chicago is not a dangerous city, and the presence of troops sent by this president and this administration was totally unnecessary. Protesters facing tear gas and pepper spray from DHS are not making this America any safer or Chicago any safer. Hundreds of people have rallied outside the ICE facility in Broadview, peacefully protesting. Are some arrested? Yes. Last Friday, of the hundreds who came there, how many were arrested? 4. 4. Does that seem like a situation where you want to call in the National Guard from Texas? And to think that the president claims that using federal military force will improve the situation, the reality is the opposite is true. While the Guard is in Illinois now, it could be in your state next. It could be your family taken from their homes and their beds in the middle of the night in a violent raid, as happened on September the 30th in the 2200 block of South Shore. And while I will continue to do everything in my power to push back on the president's military intrusion into our cities, I implore my Republican colleagues to stop and reflect what's happening. Reflect on the deployment of troops into states which are not asking for help at all and don't need it. This is an illegal, unconstitutional power grab by the president, determined to consolidate his power and stifle any consent. It does not make America safer. Mr. President, on a separate topic, the phrase cura personalis is the lodestar of Jesuit education. It means care of the whole person, and it emphasizes the need for teachers to cultivate not just a person's mind, but their spirit as well. No one embodied this ethos better than Sister Jean Dolores Schmidt. It is with a heavy heart that I share the news of her passing. For more than half a century, Sister Jean shared her faith with her community in Chicago. She was a teacher, professor at Mundelein College before it affiliated with Loyola, and she became an academic advisor. She's famous on the basketball scene. Basketball fans might remember Sister Jean as the de facto chaplain and mascot of the Loyola Ramblers of the city of Chicago. Her cheers were louder than anyone else in the arena. She helped lead the Ramblers to the Final Four in 2018. Mr. President, she was a wonderful person, and it was my good fortune to get to know her. Students at Loyola remember her as the person who always kept her office door open, a symbol of her constant willingness to take care of students, the whole person. In her pregame prayers with the team, Sister Jean would ask for God's grace in one sentence and give coaching advice to individual players in the next. She was more than a loyal fan and a coach. She was Loyola's spiritual captain. I had the great fortune of working with former President Biden to obtain a presidential proclamation to honor Sister Jean and the thousands of lives that she touched. In thinking of her passing, I'm reminded of Job 14, paragraph 7. This passage speaks of a tree that was cut down and reminds us that it may one day grow again. While Sister Jean is no longer with us, her legacy of kindness and grace will continue to push others to serve, just as she did for her entire life. Her tender branch will sprout once more, embodied in those who choose faith, service, and love. Sister Jean will be dearly missed. I yield the floor.
Mr. President,
Chair recognizes the senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs be discharged from further consideration of S. 2965 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration, that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to oppose S. 2965. This bill would impair Treasury's ability to support an important ally in South America, a region this administration has rightly prioritized. Argentina has the third largest economy in Latin America and has been a strong partner in supporting U.S. security and economic goals. Eliminating Treasury's ability to use the Exchange Stabilization Fund to support this important ally is unnecessary. I therefore oppose this bill and urge my Senate colleagues to do the same. I object.
Senator, objection is heard.
Mr. President,
Chair recognizes the senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, the reason that I ask for unanimous consent to proceed with the No Argentina Bailout Act, it's a bill that I co-authored with Senators Kane, Van Hollen, Booker, Smith, Gallegos, Sanders, and Welch. And the reason for this is because in his presidential campaign, Donald Trump promised to put, quote, America first, not Argentina first, America first. Right now, American families are struggling to pay for groceries and rent because of Donald Trump's chaotic tariffs and other disastrous economic policies. President Trump and congressional Republicans shut down the government because they refused to work with Democrats to pass a bipartisan budget that would protect 15 million Americans' health care and prevent insurance premium hikes for tens of millions more. Now, Republicans would rather shut down the government than help Americans afford health care. Because of the Republican shutdown, more than 250,000 federal employees won't receive their scheduled paychecks. National parks are understaffed and some are even closed entirely. Air traffic controllers and TSA agents aren't getting their paychecks, and shutdown-related staff shortages have led to flight delays. Critical government agency functions are being affected across the board. But one government function that President Trump didn't want to shut down, sending $20 billion, American taxpayer dollars, to Argentina. That's right. Even while the Trump administration is trying to fire more American workers and shut down more services here in the United States, Donald Trump is carefully keeping open the office at the Treasury Department responsible for executing his bailout of Argentina's financial markets. The administration agreed to send $20 billion in American taxpayer money to Argentina's central bank, and that loan is evidently just the start. Secretary Bessent also revealed that Treasury started purchasing Argentine pesos directly and promised that going forward, Treasury would do whatever it takes to keep Argentina's financial markets afloat, including buying up the country's debt. Secretary Bessent seems to be saying that the American economy can tank and Americans can pay higher prices, but there will be no end to using American taxpayer dollars to bail out Argentina. For Trump, the leader of Argentina is more important than American families struggling with rising costs for health care. This is a bitter blow, but for American farmers, the story is even worse. For months now, American farmers, particularly American soybean farmers, have been suffering under the weight of Trump's sweeping tariffs. Buyers around the world have been reluctant to purchase from our farmers when Trump is slapping tariffs on their home countries. While our farmers suffer, Other countries sense an opportunity for themselves. A few weeks ago, Argentina cut a deal with China to boost the sales of their soybeans and leave American soybean farmers out in the cold. After Argentina took those actions, after Argentina cut a deal to take the legs out from underneath American farmers, Trump authorized a $20 billion bailout for Argentina. This development is so terrible for American farmers and so embarrassing that the Treasury Secretary was caught looking at frantic texts from President Trump's own Agriculture Secretary complaining that the U.S. is bailing out a country that cozied up to China at the expense of American farmers. So why is Donald Trump backpedaling on America first to make it Argentina first? Because Donald Trump's personal friend, close political ally, and, quote, favorite president, Argentine President Javier Milei, is facing a critical midterm election in the coming weeks, and he is in trouble. Milei's popularity has plummeted in recent months because of his ongoing corruption scandals and the complete failure of his radical economic agenda. As a result, his party suffered a surprising defeat in local elections in September. Now, the election coming up on October 26th will determine whether Milei can keep exerting control over Argentina's legislature. With global investors pulling their money from the country, trying to get off his sinking ship and destabilizing its financial markets, his party's electoral chances looked really slim. So Trump is sending $20 billion US taxpayer dollars to bail out Argentina and prop up Milei so he can stay in power. That's Argentina first, not America first. But there's more. The bailout for Argentina also helps Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's billionaire hedge fund buddies. Bessent's pals have bought up Argentina's debts. And if Argentina goes down, those Wall Street billionaires could lose a lot of money. Bailing out Argentina gives an off-ramp to the Wall Street giants who want to exit their investments. And meanwhile, here at home, the Trump administration is pushing 15 million Americans toward an unwanted off-ramp from their current health care. The No Argentina Bailout Act is really very simple. It would stop Donald Trump from using Treasury's Exchange Stabilization Fund to provide direct or indirect financial assistance to Argentina, including through the use of currency swap lines, currency or sovereign debt purchases, or direct loans. Any existing financial contracts or instruments that violate this prohibition would have to be sold or terminated within 7 days. The prohibition expires at the end of President Milei's term in December 2027. And if, for some unforeseen reason, it is actually in America's interest to provide economic aid to Argentina during this period, the administration can come here to Congress and get approval. Today, President Trump hosted the president of Argentina at the White House after showering his country with American taxpayer money. It is shameful that President Trump is propping up a foreign government while he shuts down the American government. It is simple. If you really want to put America first, then you will support American farmers and American families and urge passage of the No Argentina Bailout Act. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
5371. President,
Senator from Arkansas.
I ask unanimous consent to waive the mandatory quorum call with respect to cloture on the motion to proceed to calendar number 168, HR 5371.
Without objection. The clerk will report the motion to evoke cloture.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 168, HR 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators.
Consent, the mandatory quorum call has been waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the motion to proceed to HR 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes shall be brought to a close? The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Banks, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blumenthal, Ms. Blunt Rochester, Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Britt. Mr. Budd.
On this vote, the yeas are 49, the nays are 45. 3/5 of the Senate's duly chosen and sworn have not having voted in the affirmative. The motion is not agreed to. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I enter a motion to reconsider.
The motion is entered.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a closed debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 168, HR 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent the reading of the names be waived.
Without objection.
I move to proceed to executive session to consider calendar, or executive calendar, I should say, number 460.
The question is on the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, the Judiciary, Harold D. Moody III of Alabama to be United States District Judge for the Northern District of Alabama.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report the cloture motion.
Cloture motion, we the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Harold D. Moody III of Alabama to be United States District Judge for the Northern District of Alabama, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent the reading of the names be waived.
Without objection.
I move to proceed to legislative session.
The questions on the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it.
Mr. President, I withdraw the motion.
Motion's agreed to.
I withdraw the motion to proceed.
The senator has that right. The motion
proceed.
is withdrawn.
I move to proceed to calendar number 136, H.R. 4016.
The clerk will report.
Calendar number 136, H.R. 4016, making appropriations for the Department of Defense for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion, we the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 136, H.R. 4016, an act making appropriations for the Department of Defense for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2026, and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent the reading of the names be waived.
Without objection.
And I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Wednesday, October the 15th, that following the prayer and pledge, the journal proceedings be approved today at the morning hour be deemed expired, the time for the two leaders be reserved for their use later in the day, and the Senate be in a period of morning business, with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each. Finally, the Senate recess from 12:30 p.m. until 2:15 to allow for the weekly conference meetings.
Without objection. So ordered.
Mr. President, for the information of my colleagues, senators should expect to vote at approximately 2:15 on the motion to reconsider calendar number 168, I should say, H.R. 5371. If there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it stand adjourned under the previous order.
Senate stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.